Welcome to Therapy Explained, where we explain, demystify, and destigmatize mental health and mental health treatment. My name is Deniss. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist and your very own mental health cheerleader. In today's video, we're going to be answering some of the most common questions about couples therapy. How do we get started? What does it actually look like? How much is it going to cost us? So let's go ahead and jump into the how, when, what is it of couples therapy. But very briefly before we do, just a quick reminder to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already for all things mental health. And if you feel that you've learned something throughout the video or have found it useful in some way, be sure to give it a thumbs up. So without further ado, let's just jump right into that video. How do we know we need couples therapy and who is it for? Let's start with these basics. How do we even know that we should be doing couples therapy or that couples therapy is something that can be useful to us? It's for any couple. If you've noticed, I'm calling it couples therapy, and more recently, more and more people are. It used to be just marriage therapy, but it's finally catching up to the reality of the way that people live. Not everybody wants to get married. Not everybody lives in a monogamous relationship, and so couples therapy or relationship therapy can really be for any relationship, any romantic relationship. And there are therapists out there who specialize in different kinds of relationships: monogamous, non-monogamous, polyamorous, open relationships, so all kinds. So you don't have to be in a monogamous relationship to go to couples therapy. You also don't have to be married or engaged to go to couples therapy, and you can go to couples therapy at any point in your relationship if you feel that you need it. Again, it's a space where you can come together, a safe space where you can come together to talk about your needs and stressors. So you learn how to have these conversations with one another, and sometimes it can even be helpful to come for premarital therapy if you are engaged, or right before there's a big transition in your relationship. So that's maybe one of you has to move away for a period of time, or one of you has to travel a lot and you want to learn how to manage some of that. You're about to move in together, you just got engaged, or you're going to get married. Maybe you're inviting another person into the relationship if you're in an open relationship and you want to learn how to navigate that together. So again, any stressor, anything that's coming up in your relationship that you think that you could use some support in processing. Who is it not for? So I just talked for a pretty long time about who it is for, which is basically like any relationship that wants to process stressors, right? But there are a few kind of dynamics in relationships that most therapists will not treat. You might be thinking maybe it's like substance use or something like that. And there are some therapists that won't treat substance use, mostly because it does require a little bit more training and a little bit more support. So you might want to look for someone who specializes in treating couples where one or both of the parties or more of the parties are struggling with substance use. So you might want to do a little bit more of specialization, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you shouldn't be going to couples therapy. It might mean actually that your relationship needs it. The one thing that probably will be most common, because I don't think that this is true for every therapist, and generalizations are most of the time wrong. So this one thing that I think would be about the same for most, if not all, therapists is that we won't treat a relationship where there is intimate partner violence, otherwise known as domestic violence. And again, this is also an update to the terms and the words that we use for relationships, because you don't necessarily have to be living with someone for them to be abusive and for that to still be a problem and toxic. And so most couples therapists will not treat a relationship that has domestic violence in it, and will instead try to provide the parties with the individual support that they need. So we'll probably provide referrals and support and suggestions for parties within that relationship instead of couples therapy, so that again, both parties can get the support that they need. And outside of that, pretty much any other relationship that does not have IPV or intimate partner violence in it will most likely be accepted in couples therapy. So what is couples therapy like? As I mentioned a little bit ago, there are many types of couples therapy and many types of therapists. And as we've had conversations in the past, the relationship that you have with your therapist is the absolute most important thing. So when you're choosing a couples therapist, I highly encourage you to also try to pay attention to how you're feeling in the room with that therapist during your free consultations, or at least during your first session with them, because that's going to shape the way that your therapy will go moving forward. So the both of you should feel seen and heard, and if that's not feeling, talk about it with each other, talk about it with the therapist, and see if maybe there can be some adjustments made, and if not, then probably figuring out if this is going to be the right fit for you. But ultimately, that's the most important thing. At Talk Therapy, so at my group practice, if you don't know, I own a group therapy practice in California. We provide individual and couples therapy to adults in California, and the way that we do our therapy is very psychodynamic. And so what that means is that we draw from different modalities, and from modalities that you might have heard of. So different types of therapies that you might have heard of, like emotional focused EFT, kind of couples therapy, Gottman therapy. We do narrative therapy, and so all of this stuff we use in order to help the relationship kind of iron out the things that are painful or that are adding stress to the relationship. And that really is how we see it when we treat couples, is that we're treating the relationship. So what we're looking at is the dynamic that's being created between the both of you. And as we learn about the relationship and those dynamics, we're also helping you learn it, because at the end of the day, what we really want is to help you learn tools to support one another and communicate with one another even after you're done with couples therapy. Our goal for all of our patients, regardless of individual or couples therapy, is that we want you to feel confident enough at some point to deal with the stressors on your own. That we can't control. Life is life, things will happen, and we will serve you best if we teach you what we know in a way that works best for you. And so we just draw from different couples therapies modality. We also are trauma informed and culturally competent, so we also really like to use parts of your culture. We like to also support you in how to manage all these cultural differences and how those can be strengths for your relationship. And then we're also trauma informed, so we are very intentional with the kind of interventions that we use in couples therapy. And what I just said is just how we do therapy, right? And there's so many other therapists out there who might be doing similar or a little bit different than us, or might choose just one type of therapy. So I encourage you to maybe do a little bit more research on each and see if any of these speak more to you. But again, ultimately, the most important thing is how you feel in the room with that therapist. And you're also probably wondering how long therapy is, and it's usually anywhere from 50 minutes, anywhere to up to 90 minutes. Some initial sessions will probably last a little bit longer so that your therapist can get the information that they need from you. Some therapists will not see a couple individually ever, except for at the beginning, where they are trying to gather individual information about the way that you grew up, and again, trying to get an idea of your family dynamics and worldview individually, and then you all come together. And that's actually kind of how we do it at my practice as well. So anywhere from 50 minutes up to 90 minutes, and then the fees, of course, will correlate with the amount of time that your therapist is spending with you, and we will get to the fees in a second. So how much does it cost? As I mentioned, couples therapy requires more training from your therapist and more time spent with you and your partner or partners. And the price then does reflect that. So couples therapy in California can be expensive. If you are paying out of pocket, so cash pay on your own, you're probably going to be paying anywhere from $150 to $250 plus, sometimes even a little bit higher, depending on different parts of California that you might be, that your therapist might be at, for one session of couples therapy. So it can be a little bit more of an investment, but there's nothing else that you can purchase or invest in that's going to give you the kind of tools that you're going to learn in couples therapy. And remember that At least speaking from my practice, the goal is that you're going to be learning tools that will stick with you for the rest of your life, that will decrease the amount of stress, anxiety, pain, depression that you might be experiencing in relationship to your relationship. So I really encourage you to see this as an investment if you feel like it is that overwhelming and it is that big. That kind of inner peace cannot really be bought, but it can be learned and it can be built, and it can be done with a support of a professional, a mental health professional. Now, unfortunately, in terms of helping with that fee, a lot of insurances will not cover couples therapy. They will cover individual, but they will not cover relationship, marital, or couples therapy. So yeah, I would encourage you to ask your insurance anyway. Call them up and ask them if they cover it, because you have nothing to lose either way. But you should be warned that most insurances will not cover it. If you're planning on using an HSA or health savings account, I would also encourage you to call your bank or the lending institution or the banking institution that you're using for your HSA and ask them as well if couples therapy falls under the permitted use for that account, because again, some HSAs will not count couples therapy. So these are two things to kind of just call up and ask, and at least see if it can help you with the financial cost of individual therapy, and just be warned that it might not be covered. And again, if you're in that place, if you're feeling super stressed, it might be worth that kind of investment on your well-being and mental health that ideally you will carry with you past the sessions that you've had with your couples therapist. Does couples therapy actually work, or will it make it worse? This is probably the most important question of couples therapy. Okay, so we've covered how expensive it can be. It can be different ways, all this stuff. Yes, at the end of the day, is this really worth my money? Will it actually help me? And I think this is a very important question. It's also a very interesting question, a very broad question, because that question of whether it will work really depends on what your expectations are. As with all therapy, couples therapy is not going to fix you. Your therapist is not going to come in here and say, okay, you have to love each other and respect each other and it will work out. Couples therapy is a safe space where you can come to learn to talk about your stressors, your feelings, your needs in the relationship, but we cannot ensure an outcome out of your therapy. It's also important to note that for a while you haven't been talking about the stressors, or you've been attempting to do it in a way that results in one or both parties feeling hurt ultimately at the end of the day. And when you're coming into therapy and you're going to talk about these things again that hurt or have continued to hurt for a long time, it might feel uncomfortable. Or there might be something that you've been trying to talk about and haven't been able to, have been keeping it inside, and now that it's out in the open, it might feel more raw. So yes, sometimes when we go to couples therapy, it feels like it's getting worse, because now you're talking about the things that make you uncomfortable and you're not pretending it's not there anymore. You're having to face things. So yeah, it's probably going to initially feel uncomfortable and worse. But ideally, then you're both committed to learning how to talk about these things, how to listen to one another about these things, and you will together figure out what the best resolution, most comfortable resolution needs to be for you two together. I hope that today's video was a good start to helping you answer some of these very common questions that we get about couples therapy. If you are interested in getting more support and you're thinking, okay, I kind of want to take the next step and start exploring a little bit more if couples therapy is right for me and my partner, or if you're together watching this and thinking, yeah, let's do this, or let's take that next step and figure out if, who's going to be the right fit for us, go ahead and check out the resources I've left down below. For you to kind of get started. And again, no commitment. Remember to take things in baby steps, right? That's what we're all about here at Therapy Explained, is baby steps. So the next step is just to figure out, okay, if this is what we want to do, let's talk to some people without a commitment. Just figure that part out. Again, I hope that this video was helpful. If you found it so, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to this channel if you haven't already for more videos on all things mental health. And remember that I'm always cheering for you.